even Trump, in his own primitive way, knows that the Republicans will get slaughtered in November. So he's trying to lay the groundwork to have something like this, because what they do know, what scares me, is they can't have a free and fair election. That is an utter disaster for them. It's a lot on every level. They know that. They're going to do everything they can to stop it. It's just literally, that's where we are. And expect the worst. Expect the worst.
I'm Sarah Ewall-Wice with the Daily Beast podcast, filling in for Joanna Coles. Today, our guest is James Carville, the legendary political strategist and consultant. He is going to make some bold predictions about the midterms, dig into Trump's record low approval, and tell us who comes out on top as Americans see these never-ending airport lines. But before we dig into the show, please take a moment to share this podcast with your friends, invite them to subscribe to the Daily Beast YouTube channel. We've thankfully reached 500,000 followers, and we're gunning for 1 million with your help. So here's our show with James Carville. So just going to jump right in here. I mean, Democrats this week flipped Trump's Mar-a-Lago district by double digits. It was a state special election, but what does this say to you about where we're headed with the midterms?
So this is interesting. This has happened ever since Trump was elected in November of 2024. It's consistent 12 to 14 point overperformance. And it's irrespective of geography. It doesn't matter if it's Florida, it doesn't matter if it's Pennsylvania, it doesn't matter if it's California, it doesn't matter if it's Mississippi. The other thing is, there was a state Senate seat that flipped, which is actually more important because the vacancy was when the governor picked the then state senator to be lieutenant governor. Now, you've been around politics long enough to know they're only going to pick somebody from a safe seat because they don't want to lose a seat in the state senate. Well, they lost it, which was a giant blow internally to Ron DeSantis. He's not going to be governor after this year anyway. So what we're seeing is double-digit overperformance everywhere. And Mar-a-Lago is no different than any other place. It just happens to be where the votes, but it's not. That's consistent with any other place.
I mean, we're talking about usually saying a competitive race is a 2 to 3 point race. Are you expecting that places where there was a double-digit win by a Republican in 2024, those are now considered competitive looking at November?
Well, I think the best way to look at November is this. If you just take election returns and you take the polling and the aggregate, I mean, everybody has their favorite poll aggregator, but they're also about the same. The question is the over-under for Democratic Senate seats, I think, is 55. I really believe that. If you're running 10, 11 points consistently ahead of 2024 performance, you're looking at a lot. I mean, once you start going north of 5, things start to fall. And every piece of evidence we have thus far indicates that that's what's happening. Now, can you come back and say, well, you said this in late March, and here we are in October, and they're saying something different? Yeah, because when the facts change, I change my mind. But right now, I'm over 100% seats is 55. I would be semi-disappointed if it was 53 Democratic seats.
So your prediction right now is Democrats will take both the House and the Senate
with ease
at this stage.
Not just take. I mean, I'm talking about 8 Senate seats or something like that. But if you look at it where we are at this moment, I don't know how a person could honestly draw another conclusion. The conclusion would be, well, once people's partisanship starts to kick in and Trump people see what's at stake, that's fine and dandy. But right now, all of the evidence would point to 55 or more Senate seats that are Democrats.
I'm curious, when it comes to Trump, he did endorse in these state special elections. His candidate, specifically in his own district, lost. When it comes to the Trump endorsement, is that a good thing for Republicans when we look ahead to the general election? He has a lot of power in the primary, but what does that mean to you in the general?
Of course, it doesn't help in the general at all. And of course, you want to run against Trump in Texas. Remember, Trump is 12 points underwater in Texas. Okay, just let him endorse, and now he's scared to endorse in primaries. And if I talk to a Republican senator, Congress said, "Look, I got to get through the primary. If I get through that, I'll worry about the general." But I mean, the idea is to fight to live another day. But I think increasingly you're starting to see Nancy Mace, who's in a tight primary for governor, saying, I'm not for troops on the ground. Walk out of this." And you're starting to see Mike Rogers, who's a Republican from Alabama, saying he's a big deal committee chair. So if we're not getting answers on why we're there, and you see Roger Whittaker, who's a Republican senator of Mississippi, say, "Well, I don't see anything that Congressman Rogers says that I disagree with." I mean, once these things start to break, they continue to break and they get longer and the break gets wide. And I see every indication of that happening. And just given the general political climate, I would expect that to happen.
I do want to talk about the war in Iran shortly. But before I go there, I do want to just say Democrats, they would want Trump on the campaign trail at this stage. That's a good thing for them, you think?
Oh, yes. I mean, in a place where he could actually help the Republicans, but you're not going to win that anyway. Maybe he can still help in West Virginia, Tennessee, and maybe I'm not even. I think it's a lot closer. Probably people think probably Arkansas, Idaho, Wyoming. But once you get past those, you're in thin territory. If you look at all the states where he's underwater, it's very few that he's approval is higher than his disapproval, and I got probably get worse.
Yeah, it's interesting because he promised he would endorse in that Texas Senate race you brought up, but he's since not endorsed. He said he would do it soon. Obviously, Ken Paxton was hedging and wasn't saying he would drop out if he endorsed Senator Cornyn. But do you expect these to be ongoing challenges? I mean, that runoff isn't until May, but it's looking uglier and uglier for Republicans just to get through this primary cycle.
Well, Ken Paxton made one brilliant political move. He said, "If the Senate passes the SAVE Act, I'll drop out." So now Trump can't. I mean, that was like, I'm not the chess player, but that was a brilliant move. It was a bridge player as a double finesse, where he said, "Okay, I'll get out if you pay." And of course, Doom, who's put $77 billion in Cohen's campaign, he doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to get rid of the filibuster because he knows that 55 Democratic senators are coming. So he's trying to, and this caucus knows that. I mean, these people they think beyond the next minute, and they're not going to break the filibuster for him. And then Paxton can tell Trump, Cornyn couldn't get it done for you, I would. It's literally that simple.
Curious about what your thoughts are on President Trump this week. He voted in the special election in Florida by mail. He's doing it while he is attacking vote by mail. Part of the Save America Act that you mentioned is this whole thing about the elections being rigged, his ongoing spiel. Literally just this week, he called it cheating, and then he went and used it himself in the special election. What do you make of that?
It's what we've known about Donald Trump since he's burst on the scene. He's a massive and blatant hypocrite. And the fact that he's engaged in hypocrisy is the ultimate dog bites man story. If he ever did something that was not hypocritical, you would say, "Wow, this is something different." But he does it every election. It's the same thing over and over. And of course, what you and I know is there's very little voter fraud in the United States. You can't say there's none, but it's almost it's hard to find it. You got to look really hard to come up with it. And he is trying to do everything he can to shake people's confidence in the election so he can say, "I'm not going to pay attention to it," but he's going to try something to mess with the election. What it is, I don't know, but we need to be prepared at all costs.
hmm I am curious about that. I mean, how do you think Democrats should combat the threats of the president to undermine the upcoming election when he talks about cheating and the election being rigged? What should they be doing at this stage to combat some of that come November?
Well, one of the things that I think is that you have all of these voter suppression laws that have been passed. He doesn't want you to have the election. In other words, if I were Democrats, what I'd say, that's all the more reason for you to go out and vote. They're trying to make it hard for you. They think you won't vote if we make the line 5 minutes longer. You show them you're going to vote. I would turn this into some level of positive energy on the part of Democrats. He doesn't think you're capable of showing up and casting your vote, and the people in your county or your parish or your township or wherever administer the election, they can count and show them and go up and vote. I would make it as voting is if you will, an act of defiance. Is that always rallies people.
That could be a point where they push back, if you will, the rallying cry.
Right. If I tell the thing that will make you want to do something more than anything else, if I tell you you can't do that, what a minute, who are you? Not the boss of me. That's gonna make me want to do it more. So if somebody says, "Don't read this book because it's a dirty book," then you're gonna go out and buy the book and read the book because they're telling you not to read it. So all of human nature is people, particularly Americans, rebel against being told what to do. Now, the Democrats, we're traditionally like, no, eat your peas. Government is good for you. We're really trying to help. And this is the one instance where we have a chance to flip the script. We can be the rogues. We can be the outsiders. We can be the power, the establishment, the giant corporations, the tech companies, the grifters, the Bitcoin people. They don't want you to vote, but you know better. You have the power in your hands not to be told what to do by a giant conglomerate of people who want to take advantage of you. That's my yeah. Turn it around. You follow what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Tell people they're telling you you can't do this. You show them that you can.
I'm curious, James. I mean, what for you is the most concerning? What keeps you up at night about the November midterm election?
That he's going to try to seize ballots. He's already doing that. He's going to try to put federal forces on the ground, and that real trouble erupts. And the trouble becomes contagious and it spreads because he's literally playing with more than dynamite here. Uh, he's playing with napalm. And what really keeps me up at night is that he tries this, and then there's some flashpoint, there's some incident, and the next thing you know, and of course that's exactly what he wants. So then he can claim, well, it's too violent out there to play martial law. Myself, president. Well, so yes, that's what keeps me up is that we have a overreaction to what he's almost certainly going to do.
I'm curious because Steve Bannon this week, the MAGA architect behind Trump's first campaign, he was talking about the ICE agents being sent into airports. And he was saying how that is like basically a test ground for November's election. They're not running the screenings, but they can check IDs. Is that something you could see happening under the Trump administration?
Of course I can, but the idea of having ICE agents in airports is horrifically unpopular. But look, understand this, Bannon is odious as he is a person. I'm sure he's smarter than any of them on that side of the coin, right? And yes, what he's trying to do, Bannon knows, and even Trump in his own primitive way knows that the Republicans will get slaughtered in November. So he's trying to lay the groundwork to have something like this because what they do know, what scares me, is they can't have a free and fair election. That is an utter disaster for them. Again, that's 57 Senate seats, 248 House seats. I don't know, I can't translate it, but it's a lot on every level. They know that they're going to do everything they can to stop it. It's just literally that's where we are, and expect the worst. Expect the worst.
In terms of the president, you mentioned him getting slaughtered. He has record low approval right now. I think to this week it hit 36% approval. Is there any way you see him being able to dig out of that trench between now and November?
I don't, and I ask other people. All right, give me the scenario where he comes back and gets to 43.5, which would probably cost him the House, but not the Senate. Well, it'd have to be, a real spurt of economic growth. By the way, the OEDC, a big international economic forecast, says we're facing 4.2% inflation. Okay.
Mhm.
Somehow or another, they're all idiots and they're wrong, but we have 1.2% inflation. That the Iranian the government decides to establish a parliament in Tehran and hold free and fair elections and allow U.S. bases on Iranian soil. Okay, that if you ask me to fantasize how to turn around, I guess that would be one of the ways that a combination of those things happening. Now, how likely they are, I'll leave that to anybody else's mind that that's what happens. The question is, what is more likely? He's at 30, let's just say 38%. Let's just give it an even number consensus. On October the 15th, is that number more likely to be 35 or 41? Or just stay at 38? And my predictive abilities are no better than anybody else's, but I kind of bet on 35.
Fair enough. Do you think Republicans, in terms of the midterms, before I move on to some other subjects, do you think they're going to come to regret their whole push to redistrict based on the president's polling, what we've seen with all these shifts in districts, these special elections? They're still pushing, including in Florida, for redistricting in some of these cases. Do you think that's going to come back to haunt them?
Well, I saw a presentation about a month ago from David Wasserman. I think most people would agree is the kind of resident expert on redistricting and House seats. And he said as a result of all of this, the Democrats have netted a half a House seat. At the end of the day, when you add up Texas and California and Virginia and Indiana, and the public does not much like this. I think there's a referendum right in Virginia. I'd be kind of curious, and I mean, it's definitely if presidential election of Virginia today, Democrats would win about 12 points. I'm curious to see how that turns out. The public is fairly uneasy with this. You saw that manifest itself even in Indiana State Senate.
Yeah, I watched that one very closely, and that was a rare case where we saw Republicans at the state level really pushing back.
In Kansas, the same thing happened. It didn't get the same amount of publicity, but the Republicans said, no, we're not going to do that. Because they know this is crazy. It's crazy that everybody likes to think the country is. The country is, first of all, we're not evenly divided. We're an overwhelmingly anti-Trump country. And all but hardcore MAGA people in this country retain the sense of fairness. Said, hey, let's have a fair election, let everybody vote. Whoever wins, we got to accept it and move on and live with the consequences. That's clearly not where Trump is, but I think that's where the country is, and it's going to be a hard slog between now and November to get there. And we just, because of shows like yours, we got to be vigilant. We got to warn people. We're going to be prepared for anything.
You mentioned the MAGA Republicans not being a majority. I found it kind of comical. We were talking about the Iran war, and a lot of folks out of the White House, the comms team, were touting the strong support for the Iran war among MAGA Republicans as their base in terms of there is support behind it, was their argument. Of course, they also were going to what they would call fake news polls to show these the support that they say is out there. But you're saying MAGA Republicans are in the minority at this point. So what do you make of those White House comms where they're really just pushing all this stuff that's just very pro-Trump, but not based in reality?
Well, first of all, MAGA's maybe 2/3 of the Republican Party. I'm just, I don't have a definitive number, but I'm sure people can mine that data to come up with but it's not 92% of it. I can tell you that. It's some, and if you look at his Republican approval, his disapproval is now 13, 14, 15. That's a lot. It's best for people to understand and see, well, among Republicans, he's 85-13. Among Democrats, he's 97, 397. Well, that's a big differential there. And, there's a lot of, if you look at Mark Bowman, I mean, even, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you start to see some of the even, really MAGA people like, or Tucker, or Joe Kent, we really believe this anti-interventionist stuff, man. We really did. I mean, some people are just anti-interventionists to their core, and a lot of them, a sizable number of them in MAGA. It's just the rest of them say Trump said it. I believe it. That settles it. Okay, those people probably not going to change very soon. But they're not. They're only 2/3 of 40%. They're not nearly 51% of the country.
You talk about that 13% Republicans. I mean, that's a huge amount when
Huge.
it comes to
And
margins.
it's more likely to continue to grow. And that's a number that everybody says he's still solid with Republicans. And if you look at it, you go, well, maybe he's got to be more solid than he is now.
I bring that up also because, I mean, where you talk to people and you start to see some of the decline. I mean, we have the Iran war, which I'll get to, but we also have this chaos going on in Washington. And I want to talk about the chaos going on Capitol Hill. I mean, the president demanded that DHS funding be attached to his Save America Act, which is about voting. And then he really immediately had to back off of that because Republicans rushed over to the White House and essentially talked him down on this ultimatum for Democrats. But I want to get your thoughts on who is really in control right now when it comes to Republicans. They have the White House, they have the House, they have the Senate, but there appears to be some chaos, and it just continually brews as we're in this shutdown that's going on. I mean, we're approaching the longest shutdown in history for DHS.
Well, the one person that we know that is not in charge, that has no influence, is Mike Johnson. I mean, literally, the guy, I guess you could say he's there. He's got to be the most ineffective and compliant Speaker of the House that's ever been. On the Senate side, you remember this TSA thing? Let me point out that Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana and Senator Cruz worked out something to keep it open. And Trump said he'd veto it, so they pulled it back. That Senator Kennedy, Senator Cruz tell you that we worked out a deal. We could, all the Republican votes, we could open this. And he told us not to. Well, it's just going to come a time that something, it's probably going to be after the election, unfortunately, that somebody going to say, well, wait a minute. We're the first branch of government. I think the Congress is established in Article 1 of the Constitution. I don't know what it means to be in Article 1, but apparently the founders thought it was a pretty important institution that, for all intents and purposes, no longer exists. So one of the things that will probably happen after November will now go back to having, well, can't say the Supreme Court is a separate branch of government, but at least we could have 1.5 branches of government, maybe, versus 1.5.
You think there's going to be some kind of wake-up call among Republicans after the midterms, or you think because Democrats are going to take back the majorities?
Oh, no. It's one thing to, like, anticipate what getting hit in the mouth by Mike Tyson will feel like. It's another thing to actually get hit in the mouth by Mike Tyson, okay? I got hit in the mouth by Mike Tyson in 1994. You have no idea. And it's just, I can't, unless you've seen it, you can't describe it. And what's going to happen is every narrative is going to change. Every table TV jock that there's an alignment, and the Democrats have lost under 30, and Hispanics and suburban women and AAIP and all that is just going whoosh, sucked right out of the door. And they're going to be faced with a highly energized Democratic Party, and for the moment about as united as it can get. And they're going to be facing despair. Now, what do? I don't know. They might say we just double down on where we are, or how we extricate ourselves from this. And what they're going to all wake up and find out is Trump didn't care about them. They all want to win re-election. They like having staff members and people go to the laundry and find first class and get picked up at the airport. A lot of them are going to go by the wayside. And they're going to get angry at him. I really do. I think the residual anger that's coming is going to be pretty noticeable.
You think there's going to be a lot more Marjorie Taylor Greenes in the mix?
Yeah, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is kind of an independent-minded woman, and she just walked away. And I'm not. I don't exist for him. I have my own. And you start to see that more and more in what a lot of Republicans said. Well, look, I kind of agree with Jay's, but I can't do anything. I get killed back home. I mean, you're going to get killed back home anyway. It don't matter. You're dead. Understand that. You got no hope. That you're going to lose 45 seats, and you can't do anything to stop it. And he's not going to do it. And he puts you in this position, and he's not going to do one thing but to help. And the only advantage they have is the money advantage, which just it's more corruption than you can imagine. Than you can imagine, and they can't they can't raise enough special interest money to overcome the anger that people have at. Like you can't. There's not that much money in the world.
At the same time, I mean, does it feel like Democrats are like also seeing that kind of money race, and it doesn't really work the same way it used to? I mean, we've seen races where there's been floods of money that it's done nothing. And in this case, you talk about it being just corruption and blatant corruption. I mean, that feels like that could be something that rallies Democrats more than Republicans.
Well, I think it should, and the reason is I'm not saying Democrats are perfect, but we have no power. Some political money tends to follow political power. Now, it also follows the anticipation of political power. So there's a lot of PACs, there's a lot of bundlers out there that may be listening to the show and says, look, between now and November, you're smart lining up with the Republicans, but you better get straight here, because come January the 3rd of 2027, you're going to be faced with a whole different world. And as that reality sets into that community, I think you're going to see a pickup in high-end Democratic fundraising. And I think low-end Democratic fundraising is fine for right now.
I mean, in terms of then where we're at on the Hill, they're failing to reach a deal to end this partial shutdown. I mean, we're seeing airport lines. I don't know about where you are, but talking about BWI chaos here in Baltimore, the local airport is having insane lines. We've seen crazy lines in Houston. Is this something that Democrats should fear they could get blamed over at any point in this?
Not really. They're not too worried about it, because the Republicans are in total charge of the government. There was actually a Republican solution that Trump vetoed. This is a Trump. Understand, in the coming election, there's one issue and one issue only: Trump. Nothing else matters. Okay, if you like it, vote Republican. If you don't, vote Democratic. I can't make it any simpler than that. If you talk about the TSA, you can argue, well, we put this, we wanted to separate that out the bill, we wanted to stand alone, wanted to point to Reagan's. The Republicans hate government. They love shutting it down. They love shutting TSA down. They even came to the point where they had a credible plan to reopen it. And of course, Trump is the reason that it's closed. This is a Trump. You cannot say the word Trump too much in a sentence. And if you say Republicans, excuse me, I meant Trump. Practice at the mirror saying, I will not say 10 words without mentioning Trump's name. To our Father, Lord in heaven, I'll be in the name. Trump.
I don't know if the Lord's Prayer and Trump really belong together there,
I'm just
sir.
to make it up. I'm using an exaggerated point to say you can't bring him enough into the fray.
I understand. I understand where you're going with that. I do want to ask you while we're on the Trump. I was watching him this week. I mean, you could have been watching him since February 28th, where he's been going back and forth over Iran and whether the U.S. is winning this war, or whether he'll even call it a war while calling it a war minutes earlier in some cases this week. But he said the U.S. has won the war. At the same time, though, we are sending thousands of U.S. troops to the region. It's not clear really where this is headed. Republicans on Capitol Hill this week when I was up there are frustrated about not getting answers. What does this all suggest to you, the reality of Trump giving mixed messaging but declaring a victory through it all?
Well, it goes back to the reason of the origin of the war. Never forget that. The reason this war started is because Trump, quote, felt it in his bones, unquote. Now, his most famous bone is his alleged made-up bone spur that got him to stay out of Vietnam. But he said the only reason we did this is because of his bones. Well, his bones are as stupid as his brain. And I think Republicans increasingly know that. They're like Mike Rogers or Roger Wick. I mean, they're saying it out loud. There's no reason for this. They never gave us a reason. And, Phil Clay, who was a veteran of the Iraq War, the articulate, he said, look, I served in Iraq. I could have told you where I was at. And it turned out to be not a very good reason, but there was a reason. There's nobody, no Marine that hits the ground anywhere can tell you what he's doing there, what he's fighting for. Because no one knows. Trump doesn't even know. So sometimes you fight for something like the Iraq War. There was a reason. On the surface it looked like a good reason, but it didn't work out. It turned out to be true that you could use American military right to reform people into being small d Democrats. But it was a reason. Okay, you could actually articulate. No one can articulate why are we there.
It does feel like they're trying to scramble for an off-ramp at this point. I mean, do you see an off-ramp here where they are able to move forward that isn't, one, politically detrimental for them in November, or two, where it doesn't make them just look like they have egg on their face?
So one of my favorite movies, you should rewatch it, is Gandhi. And so they're at this long conference table in this British colonial administrator, high-end agent of the crown, says, "You don't think that we're just going to get up and walk out of here, do you?" And Gandhi says, "Yes, that's exactly what you're going to do. You're going to get up and just walk out of here. Right? That's what we're going to do. We're just going to get up and go home." And he may try to get some statement or declaration or something, but we're just going to leave. It's not hard. Just take the Gerald Ford, reassign it to the South China Sea, bring everybody back, rebuild the ordnance, bring all of the stuff we got, say, hey, we got a lot more serious things to do in this world. Our ordnance has been depleted, which is we're running out of bombs. People don't realize that. There's a finite number of bombs you have. And we've hit, I read 17,000 different targets in Iran. We're pounding sand now. And the one thing we know is if you bomb people, they tend not to like it. I can't imagine why somebody would not want to be bombed in the middle of the night, but apparently they don't like it.
I'm curious what your thoughts were, if you saw it at all, and earlier this week where he was talking about Iran and how they gave the U.S. This present, and he wouldn't say what this present was. Apparently, it left White House aides baffled. What were your thoughts on that when you saw that, if at all, in terms of him floating it out there?
My first thought was the emoluments clause of the Constitution, but then I busted out laughing. Why would that affect anything? It's just make stuff up. It sounds like, because if he says that, it sounds like there's been, my people will believe that they're trying to suck up to me because I'm winning the war by so big. That's all it is. Just another lie. And you'll never know because there's nothing at the bottom of it. Well, that sounds good. I'll just say it.
I mean, in terms of getting out of this situation, if the negotiations do move forward, who in this administration do you have confidence in negotiating? We had Jared Kushner, we had Steve Witkoff that we bombed. We have J.D. Vance apparently getting in, and Marco Rubio has been in it throughout. I mean, who would you have confidence in this administration to move forward?
The one that gets the biggest bribe, I don't know, Witkoff, Jared, who it is, but if anything happens, somebody's going to get the license to build a resort on the Persian Gulf. I don't know, whatever they do, or just open a oil company or something. That's about, usually a career of diplomats, they have ethics rules, they have things that they follow, they say this, all this, that. Not now. We just go right to, I mean, there's all kinds of stories that say, that do arithmetic on how much the Trump family has made since the election. And I've heard figures it's $4 billion. It's a lot of money. To me, it is anyway. But it's all of this is done through financial transactions, diplomacy. This is not the way we do business in the United States today. We don't have diplomats. We have grifters. And that's who's in charge of the country, who's in charge of the peace, in charge of war, in charge of everything.
I mean, during your illustrious career, have we ever been in a situation like this, that like what you're seeing with the conflict with Iran?
No. And so this is the question. When you're in a situation like this, people say, well, you got to admit that the Democrats have this kind of problem, or you got to admit Trump was right to get rid of the penny. I could have written a 1,000-word essay on why Japan had reasons to be aggrieved on December the 1st, 1941. I couldn't have wrote that same essay on January 1st, 1942, because nothing justified what's happening. And that's my complaint with both sides. It tries to make a 90-10 situation look like a 50-50 situation. It is no such thing. And if people say, well, James, you have Trump derangement syndrome, my answer is yes. And we know there are times in history where insanity is so prevalent that insanity is actually the same reaction. In a novel Catch-22, as I pointed out, the guy said, I don't want to fly because I'm insane. And the psychiatrist said, the fact that you're insane makes you sane. So if you're sane right now, go to the psychiatrist because you're really, truly insane. If you're insane, you're fine. You're in the profoundly normal range. Because just the only thing something like this can do, this level of craziness, if it doesn't make you crazy, then, well, you're crazy. That's what I can explain.
In this crazy world that we're in, do you see a scenario where we're still in Iran in November, or bombing Iran in November?
I honestly, off the top of my head, I don't know. But as Yogi Berra said, predictions are hard to make, especially about the future, and especially in the area. But I don't think there's any appetite to be there now. I don't think there's one. I would love if this country would turn around. I mean, understand, we got Iranian people, some of the most talented people on earth. I mean, half the people in our country have a higher education degree, and half of them are women. I mean, the regime is autocratic, is not democratic. It has no respect for human rights. It engages in international crime. But the Iranian people are very talented, and I, would dream one day that come back into the community of same nations. But I think what we're doing now is delaying that day, not accelerating that day.
I mean, Trump says we're winning. He's apparently watching montage videos as his briefing of us winning. I'm just curious on your thoughts on that before I let you go. It's a video compilation that is his briefing as he declares the U.S. is militarily winning this war.
Well, I'm a veteran of the Vietnam era, and all I heard was how much we were winning. We were winning so much our heads were spent. We had lower casualty counts. We dropped more bombs. We did more. But what we didn't do? We didn't win the war. And I mean, there's a lot of strategists and people that understand this kind of thing a lot more than I do. What is winning? I mean, if I watched a baseball game last night, the opening night in San Francisco, there was a score, right? We know who, but war's not like that. It's different.
All right, James Carville, it's a pleasure to speak with you, and I hope we do this again in the future. That was our show with James Carville. I was particularly interested in what he had to say and his ominous warning about the midterms and what Trump might do as he questions the validity of the election. But Carville making some bold predictions about who will come out on top and saying that Democrats can take not just the House, but he predicts also the Senate. It'll be something to keep an eye on moving forward. For now, we encourage you to join us in the conversation. Sign up for our YouTube channel. Follow us on social media. With that, I'm Sarah Ewall-Wice with The Daily Beast. Thank you so much.
So the good news is we have so many B-Beast tier members now. There are too many names to read out, and we really appreciate your support. Thanks to our production team, Devon Rogerino, Ryan Murray, Rachel Passer, Heather Passaro, Neil Rosenhouse.